I'm David Lombardino, Editor-in-Chief of DLA Editors and Proofers, here to give you a few tips on how to write an outstanding personal statement. In this video, specifically, I would like to cover what to choose to write in your personal statement. And so to start off with, I want you to first consider the program or programs or specialty that you're applying for. And I want you to think about what are the specific characteristics of those programs or specialty. What are the ones that distinguish them and that relate specifically to you? And so if you're applying to a group of programs, say that there's 30 programs that you could apply to, but you're only applying to 10 of them, I want you to think of the specific characteristics that are common among those 10 that are not necessarily common among those 30. And when you're thinking about these characteristics, I want you to be as specific as possible. I want you to be clear about what are the details about the programs or the specialty that you're applying to, so that you can then take the next step of thinking about which of your experiences and which of your personal or professional characteristics best align with those details. And so that brings us to the next step, which is you need to know your experiences. I want you to know your CV, but I also want you to think outside the box, because perhaps you have something that's not included in your CV that could be relevant. So in other words, use that perspective you've just gained about what are those key details that attract you to those programs or that specialty, and think about which experiences you have had, whether they're on your CV or perhaps they weren't on your CV, but you can think of them anyways, that relate to those characteristics, to those details. And think about which ones of your experiences can show that you align with those characteristics of those programs or that specialty. And then part of that, of course, the next step is to think about what are your personal or professional attributes, whatever they are, and think about the top 2 or 3 that most closely relate to those details we've just been talking about. So if you're patient, if you're diligent, if you generally show up on time, if you're thoughtful, if you're studious, if you have great bedside manner, whatever your characteristics are, think about the ones that are personal and unique to you, and think about how they would play out or have an impact and how you would perform professionally or in the program that you're applying for. And when thinking about these experiences and thinking about your personal attributes, I want you to think specifically too of what are the challenges that you have had to face and overcome that can illustrate your character or these personal attributes that we've just been talking about. And the more specific you can be, the better. Like if there was a specific lesson that you learned, a specific trait or characteristic that you gained through an experience, or if there was something where it really you had an experience where it just really shifted the path that you were on or the vision that you had for your future career, that's something that you would want to consider to include in your personal statement. And then of course, any experience that you've had in which you embody or you were able to perform, at least to some extent, who you imagine you're going to be in that program, or even better, in your future career. So for example, if you're applying for medical residency and you imagine yourself to be a certain kind of doctor, say one who's really caring and warm with patients and their families, think about a time specifically in medical school when you were able to do that for a patient and that patient's family. And that's just an example. There could be many ways for you to do that, but the more that you can show that you've already been doing what you envision yourself to do, the better off you're going to be, and that's some of what you're going to want to include in your personal statement. Now, taking a step back just a little bit and going back to personal characteristics, thinking about the experiences that you've had, from that perspective, you want to establish what will be the themes and the key points that you're going to want to deliver in your personal statement. And what I mean by theme, for example, if we're talking about diligence, if that's your primary personality trait as it relates to the program or field you're applying for, perhaps you have also 2 other characteristics that you want to establish. You're going to want to lay that foundation in the introduction. So you're going to want to think about what you can describe in your introduction that's going to portray those and establish them for you. And then what you want as your next step is, through your body paragraphs and also in your introduction, you want to either expand, refine, or deepen that foundation that you've laid in your introduction. So, in each step, you want to be as specific as possible, and you do not want to be redundant. What I mean by redundant is you do not want 2 paragraphs or 2 descriptions to deliver essentially the same point. If you want to deliver the point that you are diligent, for example, and you're going to give an example from, say, medical school, let's say from your first year of medical school, that's fine. But if you want to have another example from that portrays how diligent you can be, it can't simply be something on the same level. Maybe you go from the first year of medical school and you're diligent about your studies, and then you go to your 4th year of medical school and you're diligent in following up on a patient or researching something about a patient's presentation or the proposed treatment plan, whatever. But in other words, don't just leave it at the same level. Take those attributes and develop them. Increase the understanding of the reader at each point in your personal statement. And that's going to be true of the body paragraphs, and that's going to be true of the conclusion. And so when you reach your conclusion, you do not simply want to reiterate or rehash or just tie off everything that you've already discussed. You want to progress that understanding of what you have been establishing through the body paragraphs. And so think about clear examples, think about clear, specific statements that you can make each step of the way. Now, of course, if you have more than one theme that you're establishing in your introduction and that you want to carry through your personal statement, you don't necessarily need to touch on every one of those themes at each different point in your personal statement. One theme may be more relevant at one point than another theme, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to abandon a theme or multiple themes that you've established in your introduction in your personal statement. And similarly, you don't want to, in other words, you don't want to lay the foundation in your introduction and then abandon it and never bring it up again. And similarly, you don't want to start developing it and then kind of leave it incompletely developed or just halfway developed through the middle of the personal statement and toward the conclusion. Finally, what you want for your examples is you want your examples to show the characteristics that you want to embody and portray to the program. You don't simply want to say, hey, I'm diligent. You want to show specific examples of when you've done that. And if you do all those things, you should have a really great working draft for your personal statement. We have a lot of options that we offer for personal statements and would certainly love to help you with yours. Come check us out at www.dlaeditors.com. Once again, www.dlaeditors.com.